Answers no. Okay. Thank you so much for your responses. All right, so we're going to roll into our scenario now. So for this one, we're asking you to communicate in the chat. It's not right now we're not going to be opening our mic to discuss. It's just for us to have our thinking hat on as our presenters present throughout this session, okay? So I'm going to share a scenario with you and just consider that as we go through. So we have a parent in Maypen who is told by a teacher that their child needs to be tested, but they do not fully understand what that means or where to go. Immediately, the parents become worried. Like, this is not a classroom test, it's outside of the regular test, so anybody would be worried. Questions begin racing through the mind. The parent starts wondering, does my child have a problem? Has a disability? What is it? What is wrong? Is something wrong? Will my child be removed from the classroom? What happens after my child is tested? They begin scratching their head like, where do I even go? Who do I talk to? What do I do next? And these are real situations, right? If you've ever had these questions or supported someone who has, you are certainly not alone. These are real concerns, and we're here this afternoon to help us go through those thoughts. So I encourage you to hang tight as I introduce our first presenter who will help us unpack the assessment process and address many of these concerns. So I'm going to introduce our first presenter. Bathsheba Shaw is a dedicated education professional, mental health advocate, and community leader whose work is centered on empowering individuals, strengthening families, and creating inclusive opportunities for all. In her professional capacity, Ms. Shaw is a trained associate educational psychologist and educator, currently serving as the special needs coordinator for the Ministry of Education, Youth, Skills and Information, Region 7, located in the parish of Clarendon, Jamaica. In this role, she provides leadership and support for children with special education needs, creates a space for capacity building for teachers and parents who play a critical role in their development and success. Ms. Shaw is deeply committed to educating, equipping, and empowering educators and families with the knowledge, skills, and resources necessary to effectively respond to the diverse developmental, academic, social, and emotional needs of children. Her work focuses on promoting inclusive educational practices and ensuring that every child can thrive. Beyond her educational leadership, Bathsheba serves as the managing director and board chair for the Jamaica Mental Health Advocacy Network, JAMHAN, where she has dedicated the past 10 years to advancing mental health awareness and advocacy across Jamaica. Through her leadership, she has spearheaded initiatives that have expanded access to mental health care for at-risk and underserved communities, challenged stigma surrounding mental illness, and fostered partnerships with policymakers, community stakeholders, and non-governmental organizations to strengthen mental health support services. Ms. Shaw's passion for service extends beyond her professional responsibilities. She is a firm believer in the power of collaboration, education, and advocacy to transform lives and communities. Through her ongoing involvement in social and community development initiatives, she continues to champion efforts that promote well-being, inclusion, resilience, and positive societal change. Guided by her personal conviction, Ms. Shaw remains committed to creating a healthier, more inclusive society where individuals and families are empowered to reach their full potential. Everyone, please help me welcome Ms. Bathsheba Shaw, our first presenter for this afternoon session. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mrs. McCaw. And thank you, everyone, for having me this afternoon. It is still in the afternoon here in Jamaica. And for those who are in other parts of the world, good evening, good morning, perhaps. All right. So today I'm here to talk about the assessment process. And I trust that from the information that I will be sharing with you, that you will learn something and you'll have a few questions for me as we go throughout this presentation. All right, so what do I hope for you to learn in this discussion? So I wanted to understand how to identify common indicators that a child may require support. I wanted to understand the different types of assessment, the rationale for assessments, your role in the assessment process, your rights as a client, and the assessment process within the Jamaican context. So as we go through this discussion, you will realize that a lot of these objectives, they will overlap in different aspects of the discussion. And as I might be a psychologist, but I'm also a teacher, so I will not be here talking by myself. I do expect you to interact with the chat. I will be looking at the chat from time to time, and I'll be asking questions or asking you to comment. So please do participate and do not allow me to feel alone in this conversation, right? Okay, perfect. So before I go into the assessment process, ladies and gentlemen, and as Mrs. McCaw introduced me, she did indicate that I work with the Ministry of Education, specifically Region 7. Now, for those of you who don't know, Region 7 is the parish of Clarendon in the Ministry of Education. So I just wanted to do a quick check. Are there any Clarendonians in the house? If you are, just put a yes in the chat. I'm not a Clarendonian, I'm from St. Anne, but I think Clarendon has adopted me, having now worked in the Ministry of Education Region 7 for quite some time. Yes, I see some celebration here. Yes, yes. So I'm representing your parish in the discussion today. So I hope you even feel more at home as we talk. So let us look at Region 7 in context. So this map that I developed, I wanted you to have a picture of what the different disabilities looks like currently based on diagnosis in the parish of Clarendon. Now, in the Ministry of Education, we organize or we group schools by what we call quality education circles. So if you look at the map, you notice you see the term QECs. That is what that means, really. And what that represents are constituencies. So all the schools in a constituency in the parish are grouped together, and they are supervised and managed by an education officer. Now, for me, I serve all of them, so I don't have that luxury. But I wanted to understand what the spread of the diagnosed disabilities that we are seeing right now based on students who are being supported by special education needs assistants. And some persons might know them as shadows. The name has changed. They were shadow caregivers, and now it is special education needs assistants. So as I'm going through the discussion, you'll hear me refer to SENAs, and I'm referring to those personnel. So currently, we have approximately 100 students in the parish of Clarendon that is being supported by SENAs. And as you can see on this map, you see a wide spread of different disabilities. So this wasn't done based on the numbers, it was just based on the different diagnoses and the spread. So you'll see the ADHD, you'll see the physical disabilities, you'll see the dyslexia, you'll see the autism spectrum disorder, schizophrenia, conduct disorder, intellectual disabilities, speech and language disorders. And we can go on and on. There are quite a number of different diagnoses that we're seeing. Now, what I want to clarify though, this does not represent all of the diagnoses or even close to the number of students who have been assessed in the region. and have been diagnosed. And I also want to caution too that we do have a number of students who are undiagnosed, but based on the presenting symptoms, it would suggest that they will fall in one of these categories. But of course, we don't know unless the assessment is done. So what does Region 7 look like in all of this? It means that Region 7 is a melting pot. And what we're seeing right now, the data is evolving as we continue to take a closer look at the needs of the region. Approximately 70% of our students are presenting with a learning or developmental disability, and most of them, of course, they are undiagnosed. So what does that mean? It means, therefore, there is a high demand for psychoeducational assessments. It therefore means that there is a rapid increase for the number of individual intervention plans that we have to develop to support these students as they navigate the teaching and learning environment. It also means that there has to be increased parent sensitization, just like this, so parents can learn a little bit more about the disabilities and how to support your children. And what it also means for teachers is that teachers need to know, be brought up to current so that they understand what are the best practices to implement to support children with special needs who have been diagnosed and in a lot of cases undiagnosed, because that is our context. So why do you refer a child for an assessment? Now, the question was asked earlier if you've ever had a situation where a child was assessed, or if you would have brought a child for an assessment, and there were some persons who would have responded to the poll. And so here are some reasons. Now, I know that I have some parents here on this platform. Now, if there are parents, just put yes in the chat so I can see. Let me see all the parents who are here. Parents who have school-age children, I should say. Whether you're in Jamaica or you're in other parts of the world, just say yes so I can see. All right, so I'm seeing some yeses. All right, so as a parent, there are some things that you will pay very close attention to. So you will know if there is something that looks a little bit different than what you think should be the case. Now, some of you may be first-time parents, but the truth is you have interacted with other person's children. You have seen children in other spaces before, so you understand what the course of normal development should look like. Not to say if they're special needs, they're abnormal, but you get where I'm going with the conversation. So a number of the reasons why you would refer a child for an assessment is, for example, when you realize there are some academic deficits. So, for example, a child is having difficulty with reading. It doesn't matter what you try, the child is not able to grasp the letter sounds, not able to blend those letter sounds, not able to demonstrate phonemic awareness, and you are very concerned. Your child is now 7 years old, about to go into grade 2, and is still not reading at the grade 1 level. Those are some reasons why you would go about to seek an assessment. You have some children who are not writing. We know that there are certain things we expect of children as they develop, and they should be able to demonstrate certain things. But we know sometimes our children are extra special, and so we might see a little difference in how they are developing. So they might be having difficulty with writing. Some of them don't like to write. And these are some of the things you have to look at. Some children may even have poor memory. Have you ever experienced a child who you have to teach them a concept over and over, and after you teach them today and you ask them about it tomorrow, they don't remember a pin? Anybody has ever experienced that? I see it quite often in my everyday work. And then you have some children who they have not shown that they have demonstrated that they have developed any verbal language, and so they are not able to communicate verbally with you back and forth. A child that is probably 5 years old, and as you know, with language develops sequentially, and so a child may be at a point where he or she can say a one word, so mama, then it evolves to mommy, dada, it evolves to daddy, and then sometimes you will see short phrases a sentence, and you are seeing where that is not being shown in your child's ability. And then sometimes you have other children who may have attention issues. So they're not able to focus, they can't complete things, they are disorganized, they are very busy, easily distracted, just so many different things. And these are consistent concerns that may be affecting your child's everyday functioning, whether at school or at home. Now, there are other reasons too why you refer a child for an assessment. Sometimes your child might be gifted. So, for example, when we have these conversations about assessment, most times we spend the time talking more so about the children who we consider to be struggling, but we don't talk about the children who are considered to be gifted and they are performing way beyond their ability, academic ability. And so for those children, sometimes they get very bored, and you realize that for that child, perhaps, and I've seen a video of a little boy, he's probably less than 5 years old, and he can do very complex math calculations in his mind and tell you the answers. So signs like those can indicate what is happening with your child, and do you want to investigate, because again, parents, you are the experts. Not we might be the professionally trained, but you are also the experts too. You observe and you can share. You can now decide, you know what, I need to know a little bit more than what I'm understanding right now. And that is why this conversation is so important. Now, who can refer a child? A guidance counselor, pediatrician, principal, and sometimes you parents. And within the Jamaican context, and as I shared those numbers earlier, a lot of parents are now taking it upon themselves to find psychologists who can do these assessments based on what they have observed themselves. So they don't have to even come to me and say, Miss Shaw, I have these concerns. The parents are now becoming the investigators. Yes, parents, you must investigate when you are not sure or when you are suspicious that something might be a little bit questionable and you want to understand a little bit more. And so it's very important, parents, too, that you take the initiative sometimes to get the information to support your child. So what I want you to understand too in this conversation is while we are talking about why you should get your child assessed and all of that, what assessment is not. Assessment is not labeling a child. And if you agree with me, put yes in the chat. Assessment is not labeling a child. Yes, we want to investigate, but it is not labeling a child. Very, very important. Assessment is not eliminating a child's right from attending school. Please, yes in the chat, put yes in the chat if you agree with me. No, these are things that I see on a daily basis. And I'm very happy for this platform so I can use it to preach. So you can preach to the unconverted, right? Yes. Assessment is not putting a child in a box. It's very important. An assessment is a snapshot of a child's ability, and so you use that information to assist you to work with your child in the best way possible. Assessment is not a prediction of your child's future. Put yes in the chat if you agree with me. And at this point, I should be seeing 19 yeses in the chat because everybody should be agreeing with me. Yes? And lastly, assessment is not a conclusion on a parent's failure. Parents, if your child is experiencing challenges, academic, cognitive, behavioral, sensory, it is not because you have failed. I want you to hold on to that. That's very, very important. You have not failed. It's important that because you are a winner as a parent, you are investigating and you are getting the support that you need for your child. Yes. So there are different types of assessment. I won't go into all of them, but I just wanted to understand that in our Jamaican context, there are different types of assessment that impacts our children. And it's important for us to ask the questions. It's important for us to pay attention to what these results mean and what does it mean that you need to do. So you have formative, you have summative, and you also have the diagnostic. So these three are the main ones that we utilize in our context. Now, you want to ask a question: what is an assessment? Now, as it relates to assessment in education, it has a variety of processes. But the main goal is to test, to measure, and to evaluate students' performance. And so you might see a situation where a child may do a standardized test, such as the PEP examination for those who are here locally. For those who are overseas, the PEP examination, that is a national exam that students take in grade 4, 5, and 6. And there's a profile that is developed from that examination, and it determines if the student is proficient, if the student is developing, or if the student is at the beginning stage of their development based on what is expected for their grade. And that information is also utilized to place students in high schools, moving from grade 6 into grade 7. So it is done over 3 years. Yes. So that speaks to that aspect of assessment. Now you have the diagnostic assessments now. Now I made reference to that in terms of the psychoeducational assessment. So you have the administrative intelligent tests, the cognitive test batteries, behavioral tools, and we can go on and on. And this is what we utilize now to be able to have a full picture of what's happening with the student. And you can utilize this now information to plan for that child at school. Now, I made reference to the different types of summative and formative assessments, but this picture here gives you an idea of the different types of summative assessments that we have here locally. So, for example, at the early childhood level, we have the Age 4 readiness test to determine if that child is ready based on their developmental expectations for age 4. That informs intervention. That informs what type of support needs to be put in place. For students in grade 1, you have what we call the GOILP, which is the GOIL. That is done at the beginning of grade 1 to see if that student is ready for grade 1. And based on that information, interventions are designed to support that student. And then coming soon, but it's not here as yet, the grade 2 diagnostic test. We currently have the grade 3 diagnostic test, and I just made mention to the primary examination profile, which is the PEP 4, 5, and 6. And then at the secondary level, you have the IDRI that is used to screen students, City and Guilds that are external exams, and CSEC. Now, I just want to backtrack a little bit on some of the summative assessments in Jamaica. It's very important, parents, that especially for the PEP, what I've observed is that parents are really invested, which I understand the reason, really invested in the fact that when this summative test, such as the PEP examination, is done, there is a placement at a school. And so parents may get upset because perhaps the school that a child is placed at is not considered to be one of the traditional schools that does very well. But what I want you to do, parents, I want you to ask the important questions and not just look at the school the child has been placed at. Parents, if you are here, put in the chat, ask the questions. Yes, very, very important. Ask the questions. When your child is placed at a school through using the PEP examination, ask the important questions based on the profile of the student. Is the child developing in the different categories of the examination results? Is the child at the beginning stage? What does it mean in terms of ongoing support for your child? So you might not understand all the technical things, but I want you to ask those very, very important questions. What does this information mean, and how can I support my child even better? So regardless of what school my child is placed at, I'm already thinking of a mechanism to put in place so that my child can thrive and be at his or her greatest potential. Parents, if you agree with me, put yes in the chat. because it is very important that we rewire our thinking about the results of these examinations and what it means for the outcome of our children. Now, some of our formative assessments are like quizzes and presentations and worksheets, and it's just to basically track if the child is understanding what is being taught as they go along. And it's also important for you to ask the questions when you check the books, which you should check the books. When you look at the test papers and you get the reports, you should ask those questions. Is my child not understanding this concept? And if you don't know how to explain the concept, because I know many parents have that challenge, who can I rely on to get some additional support from my child? Because sometimes we have the best interest at heart for our children, but we may not have the ability, and that's okay. What is important is where you can try to pursue the support elsewhere so that your child can thrive. If you agree with me, put yes in the chat. And you all should be putting yes. All right. And then you have the diagnostic assessments. So we know for some of us the different instruments that you. So in terms of academic, to get the cognitive, and you'll hear about the word IQ. So you might have instruments like what you call the RAT, the WISE, the WISC. And for the academic, cognitive, sorry, and then for the academic, you have like the wide range achievement tests, the RAT5, the microdiagnostic test, just to see where your child is performing in terms of math and reading and comprehension. And then you have the behavioral aspect. You can use the BASC, and these are used by professionals, of course, not parents. Parents can't administer these tests. You have to be professionally trained and credentialed to carry out these assessments. And also the adaptive to understand child's daily living skills, their socialization, communication skills. It gives you a full picture of that child's overall functioning. And these are some of the instruments, not limited to these that I've listed. There are others, but we don't have the time to go into all of them. But these are some of the instruments that parents utilize, and not parents, sorry, practitioners utilize to get a snapshot of your child's overall intellectual functioning. So the assessment process, it looks differently in a sense that there is a standard process and then there's another process. So let me explain what I mean by that. So if you notice on my slide, I indicated assessment process 1. So the standard process is there's an observation of the child. Maybe a teacher observed the child, observe certain behavioral patterns or academic deficits, and then a guidance counselor may make a referral. Then a consultation occurs with the psychologist, who would, of course, do what we call an intake or an interview, ask questions based on what your concerns are, to make some assessments as to what is the best path forward in terms of assessment and what instruments the psychologist will be utilizing based on this information. And also, too, this information that is given in the interview gives some additional picture, too, that sometimes the instrument doesn't necessarily always capture. And so that interview is valuable. And so from the interview, of course, the testing takes place. That's when the assessment is done, the instrument is administered, and the personnel that carries out that assessment, the psychologist, is observing that child too and making notations to, of course, to be able to write a comprehensive report so that you can now take that report to get the support. Now, after it is done, the data is analyzed. And of course, what is expected is a feedback session. What does that feedback session look like? There should be a conversation between the psychologist and you, the parent, and that is where your rights are important. That's where you ask the question, because guess what, parents? You are not the experts in these technical assessments. So there must be a conversation where they explain to you, what does this result mean? It should not just be, oh, your child has an intellectual disability and the conversation is over. No. What does that mean? How can I support my child? So many times I've encountered parents who come to my office with a report and I say to them, did the psychologist explain this report to you? And the answer is no. And I'm usually very disappointed because I want my parents, it doesn't matter what their education level is, what their level of exposure is, there is an ethical responsibility to let the parents understand what this technical report really means and how they can support their children. So this is a typical standard process, but then there is another process based on our local context. So this is process 2. So it could be there's an observation, there's a probe, based on parents or teacher might see something, and there's a consultation at the school, the teachers, and they might decide, okay, you know what? We're going to screen. Now, there are some informal instruments that they don't necessarily capture like your cognitive intellectual function, like the whisk and the Wyatt, but it gives you some information in terms of their academic performance. So like the IDRI will tell you what the child's reading is looking like. And some teachers will administer this and use that information to develop what we call an individual intervention plan. Now, why is it important for me to mention this? Many of our students, as I mentioned earlier, they have presenting symptoms of different disabilities, but they are undiagnosed. And that is the reality of our context. And so many times what the teachers have to do is, okay, especially when it's academic related, they try to use what instruments they have to try to develop interventions. Some parents are not as responsive in getting the formal assessments done. And so it's a trial and error process. And so the interventions are actions, the data is analyzed, the monitoring of the intervention to see if the child is responding to the intervention, and the feedback may occur, and the cycle may start again depending on what's happening with that particular student. And as you see at the last part where there's a feedback, it depends on the level of responsiveness of the parents and their level of interest. Because the reality is that some of our parents are not very interested and they are not engaging in the process where the children's educational needs are concerned. So I mentioned who needs to explain the report before, so I won't go into that because I know that my time is far spent. So I'm just going to move on. What happens after the intervention? So I mentioned that once a formal assessment is done, and I'm referring to process 1, it's important that parents share a copy of that report with the school. It's also good when a copy of that report is brought to the ministry. Once I'm aware of it, I try my very best to review the report, visit the school, and give them some guidance as to how to implement the recommendations to support the student. So that's very important. In a lot of cases where we ensure that there is some form of intervention that is implemented at the school level to support the student, build the capacity of teachers. So sometimes we'll have workshop that is focused on a particular disability. It could be an intellectual disability. It could be the writing of an individual intervention plan, because guess what? The reality is that the students are there and we want the parents, teachers rather, to be able to support the students well. Yes? And of course, we want to be able to build psychosocial support for our special needs students because it is very critical. Our students know when they have a challenge. They know when they are a little bit different, and it doesn't matter if they're verbal or non-verbal. It's important that we put these mechanisms in place so that they benefit from the level of support as much as possible. And we must ensure that data tracking is being done. Parents, when you go to a school and you get a report on your child, or if you have an assessment report and you take it, you must ask questions. What is the data to show that an intervention is being done? And what can I do based on what you have? We must be able to see evidence that something is being done to support your child at school. All right. So I did mention some of these. We have to ensure that in some cases where a child, sometimes the report may say that the child may require alternative placement, probably based on the nature of the child's disability. A more intimate setting is needed for your child's education. And sometimes parents may have a difficulty with that. But what I want parents to think about is the fact that when you're thinking about your child's needs, it's not about your ego or pride. It's about what is best for my child. What I want for my child in 10 years. Do I want my child to possibly be able to function independently in some capacity? So, what decision is going to allow me to reach to that end goal? And that is what I want parents to be committed to. I don't want parents to be committed to the idea of the ideal. You want your child to be like every other child. Your child is not like every other child. Your child is a little special. And so we have to, under special circumstances, do things a little differently. So I want parents to really think about that very, very keenly. Very important. Now, what kind of support exists within the ministry? So in some cases, as I mentioned, there's alternative placement where a child may need to be put in a specialized setting and special accommodations for national exams. Some children may need a little extra time to complete their exam. They may need a writer, they may need a reader, they need a prompter. So once a child has been assessed, it's very important that the report is taken to the school and the school, the principal's responsibility approaching those exams is to request special accommodation through the ministry for your child. Now, what is important, even though that's the principal's responsibility, parents, you must ensure that you have those conversations early. So if you know that your child have exam that year, you ensure that September you're having the conversation, December you're having a conversation so that the request is made. Because guess what? You can't wait until the last minute. Very, very important. And of course, we also have where in instances a child may need a SENA, which is a special education needs support. And so parents, you have to apply for that. Once you have the assessment reports, for example, some children who may have mobility challenges and you need someone to assist that child to be able to navigate the schooling environment, you will need a SENA for that. So the application is required. You need the medical report if it's a medical issue, if it's a issue that is connected to intellectual, social, sensory related, developmental. You take the psychoeducational assessment report to the ministry, we review the report, and then we guide you on what the next steps are. Very important, and you can't wait at the last minute. And of course, I mentioned before that intervention plans are developed. So the teachers are guided to develop the individual intervention plan, the behavior intervention plan, and progress monitoring to see how students are responding to the support that is being given. Parents, I want to challenge you that you are the advocates. You are the advocates. So I just wanted to put in the chat, parent equal advocate. Parents, you are your child's greatest advocate for your child, not the school, not the principal, not the guidance counselor, but you. And so I want you to communicate consistently with teachers, communicate consistently with caregivers. I want you to practice. When the reports are written, there is a section in the report that speaks to strategies to be implemented at home. You have to read that aspect of the report. You may not understand the French that is written, the technical language, but there's a part that talks about what can be done at home. Parents, you have to implement that. And if you're not sure what it means, ask the psychologist. Let him or her explain to you what that means for you based on your situation. Yes. And of course, you must celebrate your child's progress. Because guess what? Small incremental progress, it matters. Your child is special and your child doesn't look like any other child. Your child is unique. And so you have to celebrate your child's uniqueness. Celebrate those progresses. Don't get discouraged because your child don't look and function like another person's child. Your child is your child. Celebrate that uniqueness. And as I've been saying throughout this entire presentation, ask questions. Ask questions. Parents, you are not the authority on some of these technical things, so you need to ask a question so that you know what to do. You will not know what to do if you do not ask questions. And guess what? No question is stupid. Because once you ask the question, you should get the answer so you know what is the best thing to do moving forward. And as I'm going to close, I just want to leave these reflection thoughts with you. Early identification leads to better outcomes. Diagnosis does not define your child's potential. And remember, parents, that you are partners in this assessment process. Not because you are not administering the instrument, but you're partners in the process, which is why you have to investigate, observe what's happening, ask the questions, be involved in implementing the recommendations at home. And now that I'm at the end of my presentation, I want to leave one question with you. And if you want to just drop it in the chat, you can. What is the one thing that you've learned today that changed how you think about assessment? Let me see if I get one response, and then I'll hand back over to the moderator. What is the one thing you've learned about that changed your mind about how you think about assessment? Is there any one person that learned one thing? And I wasn't just here talking to my computer screen. All right, so while I wait on that one person to put something in the chat, I want to thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for listening to me during my presentation. For those parents who are in the region of purpose position to serve, Region 7, and if you have a challenge, if there's a report, you need some support, need me to probably answer some questions, this is my contact information, 894-0680. That's 876-894-0680. And this is my email address. It's bathsheba.shaw@moi.gov.g. All right. So thank you so much. Let me see if anybody responded in the chat before I hand back over to the moderator. Oh, yes, I see one response. Assessment is a collaboration. So interesting to see how the Jamaican and US evaluation process align and differ. Thank you, Heather. Every child is unique. We should highlight their uniqueness and provide them the support they need without stigma of their learning possibilities. Thank you so much. And I am grateful that you learned something from this discussion today. I'm going to hand back over to the moderator, Mrs. Landem.
Miss Shaw, I want to say thank you so much. You clarified many of the misconceptions, many of the questions that parents would have had, and not knowing where to get the answers. We thank you so much for explaining so explicitly what goes on with the assessment process. And parents, I know, Miss Shaw, guess what is happening? There's a time zone issue here where persons will come on like an hour late because, oh, it's 5 and 6. The flyer will say 5 and 6. So they will come on for the Eastern time. But I'm sure they will see this recording and the information will go out there. But thank you so much. It was very clear, very to the point. And I understand that we shared something new today. Like there's a grade 2 assessment test coming up. Yes. So that was broken here. Newsflash. Beautiful. And we understand that there are different processes. The process 1 and process 2, they're somewhat similar. But we do understand that you were able to clarify that because parents would have seen the difference from time to time. But thank you for explaining all of the steps that goes on with the assessment process, and for you to explain the region. That was so cool, and the different disabilities that comes to the fore where you see from time to time. So persons may say, whoa, there's a bottleneck, but there's a reason because there's so much and you have not gotten the chance to assess everybody, but you can always project, like based on what you've observed, there is something going on. So thank you so much for giving off yourself and sharing with us. I'm sure that other persons on the call would attest to the fact that they were fed with a wealth of information today, and it will really impact us moving forward. Thank you so much. All right. Appreciate you. Don't go. We're going into question and answer segment. Now it's a time when we're going to ask the question, but not right now, okay? Just hang tight and grab a piece of mango. No, it's okay. You can turn your camera off and chill until it is time for question and answer, okay? Just a moment. All right. Thank you. Now we're going to continue. If you notice, I'm a little excited because I just love everything about supporting our students. And if you agree with um, the fact that we have to work collaboratively in supporting our children, please let me see some interaction going on there because one person cannot do it. If you think one person can do this, oh my goodness. Teachers alone cannot do it. The principal, Miss Shaw alone can't do it. And this is only Clarendon. We have how many parishes in Jamaica? All right. And this is not only for Jamaica, guys, just so you know. This presentation is not just for Jamaicans. It's international because special education is not skewed to just one country. All right. Many things happening, and we just need to be aware and be educated to support our children. All right. Cool. So I asked Miss Shaw to go and Miss Shaw, please. I'm sorry if I told her to go and have a bite of mango. It's just because I love mango. It's one of my favorite fruits, okay? And I know it's mango season. But you can grab a sip of water. And persons on the call, that goes for you too. You can grab yourself a drink and cool down because we're going to go a little bit deeper into this session. All right. We have a second presenter for you. And this segment will be led by Heather Volchko, right? Before I share more about Heather, we would love for you. My technical director is speeding ahead of me, but I'm going to reel her back in. We would love for you to participate in a second poll, which is now being shared on your screen. And as always, we value your feedback and we encourage everyone to participate as your response will guide our discussion. All right. So the question that you should be seeing is, what do you believe is the primary purpose of an assessment? All right. And then we're going to take it back from there. So you have 30 seconds to respond. Then I'll check in with you. Okay. Don't let me tell Miss Shaw, that's your do now. We need to see some responses. Okay. I'll ask her to come back on. She will make sure that it is done. Thank you, Tara, for sharing. Yes, you're confirming one person definitely cannot do it. So I'm buying some time for you to respond. Mhm. Okay. All right. Guess what? Miss Shaw, I will ask you, can you please give a star to everybody, please? Do you have enough star to share? Because everybody said the assessment process is to better understand how children learn, how they learn. All right.
I love that. That means they were listening.
Yeah. Good job. Thank you so much. So you see, we just assessed Miss Shaw, guys. She was good with her delivery. Perfect. Good job. All right. So hopefully by the end of tonight's session, we all will recognize that assessment is a fundamental tool to understanding our students, our children, and it is not that L word. You know what that L word is? It's not a label. That was a part of Miss Shaw's presentation. It is not a label. Okay? All right, cool. So now I'm going to go into introducing our second presenter. And we have with us Miss Heather Volchko. All right? Our second presenter. And I'm just going to share a little bit about Heather. So while Miss Shaw shared about the assessment process and went a little in depth about what we do in Jamaica, we need to understand that our children need to be understood. Make sense? So while understanding how a child is referred for assessment and the steps involved is critical. Many families discover that receiving the assessment report is only the beginning of the journey. Did you hear what Ms. Shaw said? Ask the question because there's some stuff there that you cannot or may not be able to understand. So for some, opening assessment report can feel overwhelming. Make sense? And the pages are sometimes filled with data, scores, recommendations, educational terminologies, and it may not be familiar to many of us, right? Families often find themselves asking, what does all of this actually mean? What is my child's strength? And how do I know my child's strength? How can I look on this paper and tell what is the strength? And how do I use this information to help my child succeed? No, guess what? We're going to have those questions or those thoughts clarified as best as possible by our second presenter, Miss Heather Volchko. So assessment is not simply about collecting information, right? It is about gaining understanding, identifying strengths, guiding interventions, and creating opportunities for children to reach their fullest potential. Heather Volchko, who has dedicated her career to serving and supporting members of our exceptional community, will help us to navigate these important questions. She will help us understand how assessment findings can be translated into meaningful support and practical actions for children and families, as well as educators. Heather Volchko is a school-based consultant and program evaluator specializing in emotional and behavioral disorders, contextual behavior analysis, organizational behavior management, and leadership psychology. She has been a coordinator, teacher, and a paraprofessional in therapeutic alternative, self-contained, and resource, as well as correctional settings. Outside of her professional work, she has worked abroad within various international education organizations, as well as statewide with organizations facilitating upward mobility. Heather is the Executive Director of TLC Nonprofit and board certified behavior analyst with her bachelor's in special education, master's in educational psychology, and is currently pursuing her doctorate. Ladies and gentlemen, and do we have boys and girls online? Please help me welcome our second presenter, Ms. Heather Volchko. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm glad to be here. I'm going to get my screen shared. Can you give me a little bit of guidance on time? What would be the appropriate time to wrap up my portion? Oh, I'm sorry.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
There we go.
Okay, cool. 30 minutes. Thank you.
Okay, you got it. All right, I am definitely a chat active presenter, so I much prefer interaction. And so in lieu of faces on screens, I love comments and reactions and all of the things. It is my hope that I can pick up where Ms. Shaw left off almost by zooming out. I am so thankful for all of the details that she was able to cover in such an incredibly short period of time. These are things that entire degrees are built on. And so thank you so much for doing such a wonderful job at giving all of the details of all of the moving pieces that go into assessment and evaluation, because there is no shortage. And I'm pretty sure every time I turn around, there's more tools and more metrics and just so many different pieces going on. So thank you so much for covering that so incredibly well. So I will share with you, typically, I am the one who is sharing that kind of information. And so that's why I'm sitting here quite in awe of just the speed and the depth with which she was able to set you up for success in just making sense of the evaluation, the assessment process. I myself started as a teacher and have gone through all kinds of different roles, but primarily I do a ton of work within program evaluation. And so if those programs are at the student level or if they are at the classroom level, the building level, the district level. We have done a lot of work of just understanding what's actually going on. And then how do we help those adults, help those students to be able to rise to their occasion. So whatever they are, kind of going to be able to step into life with, how are we setting them up to do that so incredibly well? And there is, I don't know, I kind of come at this conversation a bit hesitantly because I think I can step on some toes sometimes, because I am someone who believes very deeply and very firmly in the power of evaluation, but I've also watched it be used in not great ways as well. And so it is my hope that in these next 30 minutes or so, that I'll be able to bring forward to you that heart within the assessment process. That yes, it is all of the tools, it is all of the numbers, it's all of the observations, it's the wonderful reporting, it's all of these pieces coming together that really paint the picture of the student or of that classroom or the program, whatever it is that we may be assessing and evaluating within that educational context. But a lot of times when people are hearing that word assessment, those are the things that they're coming up with. They're thinking of those forms, they're thinking of those ratings, they're thinking of accountability systems, depending on how that evaluation is showing up, not just around the student, but also what that may mean for their adults around them, if that's staff or family. So again, so incredibly thankful to hear it be just so strongly communicated that there are so many other pieces around just that report, right? That there's, so many unknowns and so many at times unstated. And so to ask those questions, to lean in, to really push, to say, okay, yeah, fine, but what does this mean? So truly at its heart, educational evaluation is one of the ways that an organization tells the truth about itself, which is why it can get real uncomfortable real quick. So on the parent side, you're just thinking about your kid. You're seeing them and you're wanting what is best for them. But know that they are also situated in a lot of different contexts. If that's your community context, if it's within your social structures, if it's within the organization of how they're accessing their schooling, there's so many other layers going on here. And whoever is running that evaluation, whatever organization, however that is showing up, there's pieces there. There's pieces there just to be aware of. And so in my session here, I'm going to go through 3 different ways of looking at evaluation that really are all interrelated and build on each other. One is that evaluation is how schools listen and listen honestly. When evaluation is done well, it is an opportunity to truly hear what is going on. I'll go into more detail about what I mean by that. Also, evaluation is how schools act with conscience. Again, sometimes in systems, there's some ulterior motives that can kind of creep in ways that we wouldn't necessarily hope would be true, but it happens. And so I truly do see evaluation when done well. That is something that can truly bring that conscience back into the organization. And then evaluation is how hope becomes credible. I think we all walk into special education very optimistic and choosing to see the potential of that, future reality that just hasn't shown up yet. And this is where I truly see the science of evaluation backing that hope that kind of gets all of us to show up at work every day. So evaluation is for when we are trying to lead responsibly and improve faithfully. So coming out of the prior session, if this is new to you or, you're hearing all of the different labels of the tools and the different processes and all of the different moving pieces within evaluation, it just feels really heavy. Too often evaluation just feels like judgment, it's scrutiny, it's exposure, just one more thing. And quite frankly, a lot of times it will feel like individuals are just being measured rather than using that measurement as a way to then figure out how they can be supported. Of course, then when they're just feeling like they're measured, people feel threatened. They feel they get protective, they're defensive. Sometimes you'll even get folks that are just sort of become performative. In general, it's not productive. It's not useful. It's not helpful. And that's truly not the purpose of evaluation whatsoever. Evaluation at its best is not fundamentally about catching failure. Yes, that is how it is, how it feels for sure, because we're documenting all of the discrepancies and maybe deficits and all of these things. So it feels like we're just scrutinizing all of these problems. But the reality is that evaluation is about helping us learn what is true, what's helping, what's actually working right now, What's harming? Are there things that we are doing that we think is helpful, but it's not actually resulting in that learning trajectory for the student? And of course, when you put all that together, so what needs to change? Where do we go from here? What can we try? What do we need to do? So evaluation truly is an opportunity to listen, not just casually or selectively, I hear what I want, those kinds of things, but systematic strategy to how we're going to go through capturing everything at any potential level. And that is what makes that evaluation or that the assessment process really listen to what is going on. So we're listening to outcomes, what is actually coming from whatever is currently happening. We're listening to those lived experiences. How is this showing up for you? What is your experience? To the best of my ability, I'm going to try to walk in their shoes and see their world through their eyes. We listen to the context. There are so many things going on around every single individual. And that context can be reinforcing and supporting, and it can also be undermining so many different things. It is so much bigger than just the student, the child, that classroom. All of that is all situated within a much broader context. And then, of course, through this, we're listening for those unintended consequences. So people may have the best of intentions, and they're trying to do what they know to be right or supportive or helpful or good, but sometimes those actions also have unintended consequences. Excuse me. So when we're running that evaluation, we're listening for all of these things. It's not just numbers. Numbers alone do not tell the entire story. But evaluation, that's where it's both and. It's both a technical act. There is a lot of technique with what was just shared with you, so much. But it's also relational. It is a both and. You, in my opinion, you really cannot have one or the other. You cannot have that strong technical approach if you do not have that relational approach with it. You miss things. Likewise, if it's only relational, we're really missing the science behind that evaluation and that assessment. So together, that is what positions evaluation or the assessment process as truly being able to hear what is going on. So what exactly are we trying to hear? Throughout any evaluation, the whole point is we want to find that reality. Like, what is going on beneath the surface? What is happening? What is the student actually experiencing? What are the educators just kind of trying to make sense of, or what are they navigating as part of, trying to figure out how to support the needs that are showing up? Also, what are the families seeing? A lot of times families will notice things that systems are missing because it's just different contexts, and they're seeing maybe the same or similar needs in different ways. And how that shows up, it can be so incredibly powerful. And when you put all of that together, then what are those patterns? Specifically, those patterns that are starting to emerge beneath the surface, the things that you're not seeing right up front, but what's kind of tucked in there. Sometimes the most important information does not arrive in all the dashboards and the evals and all the numbers, the metrics, the reporting. It arrives in frustration. It shows up in confusion, students and families, entire communities disengaging, or just those small patterns that reveal something larger. This is what we are listening to. Like, this is the whole purpose of running an evaluation and an assessment of any kind, is we're trying to find out what is that reality that's hiding right underneath the surface that then we can use to figure out how can we jump in and support. So like I said, no one person exists in a vacuum. So I also come at evaluation and assessment processes from that organizational lens. Again, my background in organizational development and leadership psychology. I can really get in the weeds at that individual student level, but I've also seen the systems around it. And so I think it is important to also call forward that intentions are not the same as impact. You can mean really, really well, but if it's not truly aligned, that impact is not going to come through in your school, in your community, in your area that is trying to support not just one student, but multiple students. Being busy, just having activity is not the same as those things actually being effective. So that's part of assessment. When we start trying things, is it working? Is it not? It doesn't matter that we're doing a lot of stuff. Is that stuff that we're doing actually effective? Is it having those results that we're wanting? And then just because this is business as usual, the way that we've always done it, that doesn't actually justify continuing to do it that way. It all comes back into that assessment. Okay, so we noticed what was going on. Here's what we think we're going to do with it. Now, is that actually working? It's not, we notice these needs, so here's what we do. It's we notice these needs and here's how we can support those students. And then is it working? So conscious just means it's a disciplined honesty, right? That I'm going to choose to be honest about if what I'm doing is working or not and try to make some choices around that. So that means that I am going to, as an organization, I'm going to have to ask whether my intentions are matching my impact. What I'm saying that we're doing, is it actually what's showing up? I'm also going to need to be willing to ask whether our effort is producing value. It's not just that we exist or that this is, what we're, kind of the vision that we're putting out there. Is this truly showing up? Is this having good, meaningful usefulness for our families, for our communities? And does our work reflect what we claim to care about? So if we say we stand for these things, we say that we champion these things, is that actually coming through in our effectiveness? Is this coming through in our outcomes? Is our impact actually lining up when we measure that through evaluation and assessment with those words that we may be saying or communicating on behalf of our work? So when does organizational conscience speak? Well, I look at this from a variety of different angles. So not just the individual student, but all of the things going on around them as well. So when a program is busy, there's a lot of activity, there's a lot of supports being provided, there's a lot of resourcing happening, but it's not helping. We're not getting that those metrics, that data to show that students are learning, that independence is increasing, that the skills are moving in the directions that we would want them to be moving. It also shows up when outcomes improve for some, but not for others. I get pulled into that type of work pretty frequently across the US, where some students just take to an intervention and it works really well. And you see those scores trend in the direction that we would want them to trend. But then there's pockets of students that it's just not sticking for. And so that is an organizational moment. It also shows up when familiar practices go unquestioned. This is that, familiarity, this business as usual. We've always done this way. This is what's available here. It just becomes normal. But this is where I will kind of tout on behalf of assessment that eval is what can interrupt the normalcy, because the assessment is what's asking whether that practice still deserves its place. Does it still need to be implemented? Does it still need to be used in that way if it's not actually getting those results? And then, of course, when the mission and experience no longer match, when we're saying that we do these things, but our communities are not necessarily reporting the exact same experience, that mismatch can be incredibly dangerous, especially when you're trying to rally that support from the massive team that it takes to pull the support around our students. So a school can say that it values inclusion or support or growth, but if that is not actually being experienced, then it is, there's the gap, right? Like that is the gap where a lot of my program evaluation work will stand in. And so when we look at all of this, from the opportunity to listen to what is going on to that individual student within their context, and then you can put that context and understand around the, organizations and those systems pieces that are around them. This is truly where I see evaluation showing up as hope with evidence. I get when people kind of ask, what is it that you do? I talk about threefold hope. A lot of times I'll get pulled in because a student or a group of students are just not being successful in whatever metric that may be. And I get to work with them to say, hey, look, I wouldn't be here if your school or your district or your whoever didn't care enough. Let's work together. Let's see if we can figure this out. And I get to bring the student in on that. I also get to go work with the staff and say, hey, staff, your organization would not be bringing us in if they weren't trying to figure something out. Can you work with me on this? Can we figure this out? And start to instill some hope that there are actually strategies that they can try that aren't going to be crazy burnout central, but it is actually effective. And then they're going to see that it's actually working, which then is just really great when we show up to our job and we can feel like, we see that impact. Then I get to work with the families and say, hey, I know it's hard, right? Things aren't going well, but can we reinvest? Can we figure this out together? And I truly get to bring that threefold hope. But it's not enough to just be like, hey, we can do this, right? And rally that support together. You need to have that strategy, the structures, the techniques, the interventions, those things all rolled in so that then we can actually see with evidence how that optimism is actually panning out. So I do truly believe that education is inherently hopeful work, right? We are choosing to every single day walk into spaces with struggling kids and see the future of them that they're not seeing for themselves yet. So we get to invest in students because we believe growth is possible, that systems can improve, and that better futures can be built. That hope is not naive, although some may think that it is. It's actually just part of that moral energy that I think is just baked into education in and of itself. So I truly do believe that hope needs evidence to stay honest. We cannot just be pie in the sky and, all of these, kind of fluffy things. Truly, like we need to have the evidence that can back what it is that we are saying, that it's not just a good idea, it's that it's been done, that it is possible. And so all of these pieces are what then like helps us make sure that we're not perceived as, making intervention recommendations. It's really just wishful thinking. Like, no, it's actually very practical, very doable, and it does actually result in the outcomes that we're trying to make happen with this student or with this classroom. And evidence needs reflection to become useful. This is not a set it and forget it. Right. So what Ms. Shaw was presenting is talking about how do you identify a student who's got some challenges going on and really understand what are those challenges and how can we support? What can we do with that? But that's not the end. Quite frankly, as big and scary as that entire process can feel, it's truly just the beginning. And so at that point, from there forward, it's constant reflection. Is it working? Does it make sense? Are the right people at the right tables providing the right services and taking the right data to be able to interpret if that is actually working for that student? And is it moving? Does it have those action pieces? Like, is it moving in the direction that we want to see it? So this is where evaluation turns aspiration, this great idea, into legitimately trackable, measurable improvement. You can track that change over time. So how do we move from that, proof, kind of getting the pieces to being able to see improvement? The goal of evaluation, especially after you've kind of been able to identify that there is a need that needs to get supported and you've started putting some of the supports in place, the goal is not just to prove like it worked, right? In a proof mindset, evaluation exists mainly just to say, check the box, right? Progress made, data trended this direction, implemented this thing, right? That's more of a proof mindset. It's just checking the box. The goal is to guide better next steps, and that's that improvement mindset. So that improvement mindset says that evaluation exists to help us learn, to adjust, and to get better over time. That's not just the individual receiving the support, but all of us who are actually implementing those supports as well, that we are learning so that we can adjust. And quite frankly, as professionals, we also get better over time. Evaluation does need to strengthen learning. And that is across the board. So if that's our families asking really great questions, if it's our students challenging, the interventions and services that they are accessing and wanting to understand that and open that up so much more, it is so much bigger than just beautiful reports that document the measures and kind of capture those snapshots in time as that goes through. Evaluation is strengthening the learning of every single person involved because that is what's guiding that improvement. Because the improvement is not just an event, it is a cycle. That cycle requires reflection, adjustment, and quite frankly, renewed efforts, which can be really hard when you're working with either within contexts or with populations that just struggle and progress is really slow. But that's where, for me, assessment is that backbone that can then support what is being done with that evidence and bring that judgment to the table. So we can truly see, is this working or is this not? It's not how I feel. It's not, this moment or those kinds of things. It's truly all of that evidence that then we can bring that judgment into to figure out how do we continue to learn? How do we continue to improve? So before we wrap up and then shift over into the Q&A, I want to give you 3 questions that is a little bit more of the kind of the ethereal side of things. Yes, much agreement, Ms. Shaw. So much bigger than just that report. Are we actually listening? I have read some wonderful reports that are just well detailed, technically sound. But when you look into it, you actually see what they're missing. that they only were going to the people who were the most accessible, or they only reported on the results that were provided to them. If someone didn't respond, then it just wasn't included. Or there was certain people at the table that carried some aspect of formal authority, and so their voices were explicitly noted, versus others maybe not so much. So the people who are the most affected by that work, that is who needs to be part of this evaluation. Yes, when you run a technically sound assessment, you're going to have so many different people with different backgrounds and different areas of expertise, and all the things like that is the beauty of an interdisciplinary or a multidisciplinary evaluation. Lots of different fields of study all coming around to see what might be going on, to know what we might be able to do. That for me is why I'm such an advocate for education, is because rarely anywhere else you get so many fields all coming together to try to solution seek together. But the people that are most affected by the work are going to be our students, their families, and those staff that are responsible for providing those interventions. So for me, those three are who I want to see all throughout all the reports, that they are deeply involved in all of the evaluation components. Please hear me that I'm not discrediting our specialists. I myself am one. But at the end of the day, who's actually implementing and feeling the effects of if this is working or not? It's our students, their families, and their direct practitioners. So are we listening to the right people within that assessment and evaluation process? And that's where I'm just going to keep echoing what was said in the first half of the session. Ask the questions. It's okay to challenge for further understanding, because you are those people that they should be listening to, regardless of how that is formally or informally documented. And are we honest about what the evidence shows? So it's not just document it, but is it documented honestly, and are we interpreting that honestly? Integrity and evaluation requires more than just collecting data. It does require representing findings accurately, which then means that we're also going to be acknowledging our limitations with that. And in general, depending on the context in which you're situated or in which your evaluation is being run, sometimes that does mean that we need to remember that we cannot just be using evidence to confirm what we're looking for. I bring that one up because a lot of times people, when they're kind of identifying a need, they sort of think that they understand what they're seeing. And quite frankly, then they stop listening, because they're kind of just looking for what's aligning with what they think they're seeing. And so this is a challenge for the teams to say, like, are we honest about what this evidence shows? Did we actually dig out all of the evidence from all of the corners? And if you remember what I was talking about listening, like, we're listening to what's hiding just beneath the surface, which almost never will we see initially. And so when we're looking for this evidence, that is truly all of those pieces, not just what we're catching at the moment, and then we're confirming what we think we're seeing, but instead we're seeing what we're seeing, and then in that assessment process, digging a little bit deeper to see what else shows up, because that's what's going to position us to be able to better support the student. And then long past that assessment, the initial assessment, all throughout any intervention that's being provided, we're constantly looking, is it actually working? Not just is it like that self-fulfilling prophecy type of a situation. So that question, are we honest about what the evidence shows, is quite a deep question, and it runs across many, many people at the table within lots of systems. And of course, this is typically where I will get some pushback, even if there's pieces of things that I'm sharing with you. At the end of the day, are we willing to change? Are we willing to see, really hear what's going on, see what might be happening, and then actually do something about it? So evaluation has little value if it produces information that a system refuses to act on. And so for me, a system can be anything from a nuclear family system, the whole way through, governmental agencies that, overseeing education and all of the things that go with that. Any of those systems, evaluation and assessments truly have little value if it's not then going to result in change. So the real test is not whether the data was gathered, right? Did we listen? Did we capture it? Did we document it? The real test is whether the organization, whatever that system is truly willing to learn. And that's where you have to be hearing to be able to accurately, analyze that evidence and then do something about it. So these three questions, regardless of what role you have, what title you hold, kind of what seat you're sitting at that, proverbial table, I would challenge you to bring these three, right? Are you listening to the right people? Are you being honest about what the evidence is showing? And are you willing to change in response to whatever it is that is showing up throughout that process? So my hope is that within just this quick snapshot, trying to be as deep and as practical as possible, that you can understand that evaluation is a responsibility. Depending on where you are geographically located, that could be a legal responsibility. But at the end, at a minimum, it is one of the ways that institutions care well enough to examine themselves, listen carefully, and act with integrity. Evaluation is also care made accountable, because when you have continued assessment rolling through it, if you truly care about the students, staff, families, and the communities, then we want to know, is it actually working? Are we serving them well? Are we showing up in ways that are going to be useful for them? Evaluation and those assessment processes is what gives us that disciplined way to ask that question. Again, there's so many techniques. There's a massive science behind evaluation, let alone all the different kinds of evaluations within that as well. But that process is then how we can keep that accountability around the care that we are providing. And quite frankly, improvement just becomes a practice at that point. It's not just, optimistic. It's not just hopeful. It's not just, let's check the boxes and, rely on compliance alone. But through honest listening, ethical reflection, and evidence-informed action, it just becomes the new business as usual. And I say that, I know some people kind of, depending on your context, is like, that sounds great. That sounds optimistic in and of itself. I have walked enough teams through that process to go from that compliance focus through where they're really actually seeing improvement becoming their practice. It is actually very possible. And all of those idealistic things kind of become reality when you can get to that side of it. So thank you so much for letting me come and chat with you this evening. Feel free, you're more than welcome to reach out and contact me. I have my email up here if you're a LinkedIn person. And then on any of the social media outlets, that's where you can find not just me, but our entire team out here as well. So thank you so much. And I'm excited for Q&A.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much, Heather Volchko. We do appreciate, yes, Ms. Shaw, excellent presentation. I can see you two team up, you are passing on the baton and like, run, go ahead, it's your turn. Let's go, let's do this. Awesome. Awesome. That's how it goes when we are, working as a team, and we did do that. And Heather, I must say, thank you. We know how it goes with the short notice. You made it work. Thank you so much. We worked magic. So we do appreciate your presentation. And yes, I know you said that you're looking forward to the Q&A section. We are too, but I need to formally thank you on behalf of our audience, for taking the time out. And you said to chat with you. Yes, it was really a good talk. We appreciate that. And just to share the nuggets that you left with us this afternoon, your presentation has reminded us that the assessment is not the end of the journey. It is often the beginning of it. And that is true. It's not to scare you parents, it's not to scare educators, it's just the reality. It's time to saddle up ourselves and get going, all right? Assessment provides more than scores, reports, and recommendations. And don't let Miss Volchko come and look on your policy. She's going to be like, it provides understanding. It helps us identify strengths. It uncovers needs. It guides intervention and make informed decisions that support who? Children, success, growth, every child. And it's not just the child who will become successful. As educators, administrators, whomever supporting the child will be successful, right? It is important, as Ms. Volchko shared, to listen. our conscience is also crucial. Like, don't do it because the numbers say this. Is it actually working? And we also must realize that hope, we need to hold on to hope. Like, if the situation feels daunting, don't give up. Try another strategy. Try another strategy. It is an evidence-based practice. Guess what? Let's work on something else. And are we willing to change? So when the results come across, just recently, our PEP results came in, right, Miss Shaw? And I'm seeing in the papers, whoa, parents are excited. But there are some who may not be shown that are not. How are we responding to those results? Right? Let's be honest, let's be real. And are we going to turn our back? Miss Shaw would have said, your child maybe is different, is special, and let us take special as is and stop thinking about it as it's a bad thing. Your child operate differently, and let's consider that and work with them within their scope of functionality. All right. So Heather, your presentation was extremely welcoming and informative. And as you shared, are we willing to make change? And this is not just change in the schools alone. It is not just change for families, but system-wide, policy-wide. Does it make sense? Does it make sense for us to even evaluate if we're not going to do anything about it? And I really do feel that with you. I really do share that with you, Heather, because honestly, if we're evaluating our children and we're just sending them back out there, so what's happening after that? So really, it makes no sense. But thank you so much. That was well presented. And we will definitely be sharing this with persons so that they can keep, when you listen, you heard again, right, Heather? That's one of your 3 pointers. Listen, and not just listen because you're totally, listen even beyond what is being said.
Yeah.
One of the things when we're evaluating our kids, we don't just say, here is the test. All right, answer question 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. No, they start talking about what happened. Not that we're chatting home business, but it plays a crucial part in the assessment process. That's when you get to know these kids, right? Miss Shaw, I see you smiling like, yes, it's true. It's true. It is true. So thank you so much, Miss Volchko, for sharing that presentation. And most importantly, it gives families and educators and professionals the roadmap for working together to ensure that children receive the support they need to reach their fullest potential. Thank you. Appreciate you. So both presenters have helped us to see the assessment through different but equally important lenses, right? Ms. Shaw helped us to understand the assessment process, especially in the Jamaican context, while Heather helped us to understand what happens after the assessment and how we can turn the information into meaningful action. Ms. Volchko, thank you. Ms. Shaw, thank you. Great. So let's give our presenters some round of applauses in the chat because they did super well. You've ever seen when the Jamaican team running across the finish line, especially when you see both jump across yes, that was what happened just now. All right. So we have the US and the Jamaican team doing the tag teaming just now. So beautiful. We're going to move into our question and answer segment. And if you have any questions for our presenters, be it Miss Shaw or Miss Volchko, you can go ahead and share it in the chat, or you can open your mic. No, you can raise your hand. Don't open your mic. Raise your hand and we will address you as the calls or the hands. We're going to look for which hand did we see first? You can go now. So let's take the questions, comments, or concerns at this time. All right. Okay. So we're looking. Is there anything? I'm checking with my technical team. And listen, if you guys don't have any questions, I have questions, Miss Volchko and Miss Shaw, you wouldn't get away tonight. So I do have questions. Persons would have shared questions when they had registered, but I want to give them the opportunity to share. All right. And we're seeing some well done there. Good job. We have some support team here. Awesome. So if I'm not seeing any, can I ask a question for Miss Shaw?
Sure.
All right, great. So I'm going to ask one on behalf of a parent. I think it may have been addressed during your presentation, but it doesn't hurt to revisit, right? That's how we learn, right? We
Yes.
reinforce, right? So many parents become anxious when a school suggests an assessment. What advice would you give to a parent who may be fearful or hesitant about beginning the assessment process?
Right. Thank you for that question. So, what I'd say to that parent is one, you want to understand why that referral is being made. What is it that is being observed? Sometimes um, teachers will tell you they observe a particular pattern of behavior or other things connected to teaching and learning. But when you talk to a parent, the parent will say, but I don't see that at home. And so that conversation is very important to have. So you need to ask those why questions, like what is being observed that I am not aware of, and how is what you're being observed impacting my child's ability to function on a daily basis? And what is the purpose of the assessment? So will the assessment help my child to be able to um, adapt to his or her challenges based on his needs or her needs? So I think those are the important questions that need to be asked by the parent. And in asking those questions, the parent has to also undergo a bit of reflection too. What is my responsibility in the process? And am I committed to my child getting the required support, regardless of how uncomfortable I may feel about what this may mean for my child?
Can I add to that too?
Yes.
Um, I think sometimes assessments are recommended to document the problem. And sometimes we forget what that's like what that's sifting. So it's also completely okay to say, like, how is this going to actually impact my kid? Not just in running the assessment, but also in then what choices do you have, right? Like if you run this assessment, do they get access to this? Are you considering that? And then how does this actually help you figure out what's going to actually be successful or be accessible for my child? I think that's a very appropriate question, although it may make people very uncomfortable, because it truly is saying, okay, we can document this all you want, but then what? What does this open, or what does this have the potential of opening, for what may be next for my kid?
Yeah. And just to add to that is usually where there is a major gap in our local system, just based on my experience. The assessments are done, but the what next question in terms of the support sometimes can be very challenging depending on the scope of need of that child. If I should think about a child that probably has speech and language challenges or disorder, um, it, we don't have speech pathologists or speech therapists within our public system that is accessible to a parent who may not have the financial means to get access to that service privately. So then it becomes, sometimes parents may feel like this is a waste of time because how I'm not able to get the support from my child. So why am I doing this anyway? So it can get really complex, especially if it is that the support services that are required afterwards, it may not be as accessible as one may think it should be.
Thank you so much for those responses. And that is true and that is acceptable too. Meaning you just have to share as is. You cannot sugarcoat it. Like, okay, we're going to do it, and this is what's going to happen when parents cannot find those services readily. Well, that is true. Thank you so much to you both for responding to that question. I see a question in the chat. I'm going to pull it up before I ask another one. If I have and this is from Valeria Flores Montoya. If I have concerns about my child's educational performance, can I request an evaluation? And is there any way this request can be denied? And remember, this is not just skewed to Jamaica, okay? So both persons can respond. Thank you.
Okay, well, in the Jamaican context, if there are concerns about a child's education performance, well, within the ministry or within the public system, if it is that you want to consider having a diagnostic assessment, such as a psychoeducational assessment done, there are really two options to explore. One option is to go the private route, so which is to identify a psychologist who provides a service. When you exercise that route, there's no real hindrance apart from cost. So you wouldn't have a situation where it's highly unlikely where you'll be denied access to the service. From a public lens, if you were to go through like Michael Care that offers psychoeducational assessment to the public at a significantly reduced cost, I believe, that I don't know that you would be denied. What I know will happen is that the wait period is going to be very long. So typically, from what I'm seeing, I don't see where there's a denial of getting access to the service. There might be a wait period or it might be a cost factor. You do not necessarily require a written referral from a school to get a child assessed. For the most part, from what I'm seeing locally, I know sometimes Michael may ask for certain forms to be completed by the school, yes. However, they are not in charge of the assessment process in that sense.
Great. Thank you so much. So, Heather, do you have anything to add to this, or we're all set?
I can add in the just not knowing kind of the geographical region that this question is coming from. It's very, very different country to country and even different regions within any country. So I think my first thought as I was considering this question is really looking at kind of maybe making sure that you use the word evaluation or assessment more broadly. And so like what Michelle was presenting was saying, okay, you're going to run a formal evaluation on, this individual and their needs and really like do that deep dive. But this question is saying like, hey, I'm just not okay with how, the outcomes that I'm getting from my kids' education. And that is very okay to ask additional information. Can you help me understand why? What are you noticing? And all of that can be done informally. So that doesn't even need to be like a formal request for evaluation. You can simply just be saying, hey, I'm noticing these outcomes. I'm not okay with that. Can you help me understand it? And then that I have seen open up some beautiful collaborations. I will also caution that sometimes that is also when you find some things in systems that can be a little prickly. And so it just know that it is very okay to say, hey, I'm noticing what's happening around my student or my child's education. And I'm wishing for, different outcomes or something more, it's okay to ask those things, but you may not necessarily have to go like a formal evaluation, a formal assessment route just to try to understand what's going on and find opportunities that could then be used to try to get to the outcomes that you're wanting. I'll also say when you're looking at being concerned that may be denied, be friendly, right? Be gentle in the approach, especially if you're working with potentially prickly systems. Being gracious in how you're approaching it, and so it doesn't come across as feeling like you're not doing your job and my kid isn't improving. So as long as that misinterpretation cannot come from that interaction, I would be surprised that you're just genuinely saying, how can I support my student, my child in furthering these outcomes? It would be hard to deny that request, especially if it's not like a formal evaluation request, because then there's all kinds of like procedural safeguards that may come into play in your local region. But just another angle I was thinking when I read that question.
All right, beautiful. And Miss Valera is clapping like, yeah, you both answered my question. Beautiful. And I can add to that. requesting an evaluation or requesting to see your child's file doesn't necessarily mean, oh, something is wrong with how my child is performing, correct? I can give you an example with my own child when she was in 12th grade and it was about time for her to graduate. As a parent, I know I better review that file because I don't want when last minute come, oh, you have zero 0.5 of a credit to graduate. And I did ask for a file review, and that was surprising. But I did it gently, though. Seriously, I did it gently. Can I have a file review? And I went through her file, and yes, it was good that I did because it showed that she had to do PE, which was a half a credit, or else that would have impacted when she would graduate. So it is important. It goes back to both persons' presentation. Ask questions. Ask questions because parents, we are our child's advocate first. You don't just send them to school and expect, okay, it's a done deal. No, they're from home first before they get to school. So open your mouth, follow them, support them. All right. I don't see any more questions, but I'm going to ask Miss Volchko if you can leave anything at all with our audience. What is that one thing that you would leave? And Miss Shaw, I'm going to ask you as well. So when Miss Volchko is finished, then you can take that one thing that you would leave with us this afternoon.
I just say, just don't be scared of it. I work with a lot of families that sit at these tables with all of these specialists reporting out on all these results or trying to read, pages of legalese and trying to understand what's going on. Um, don't be scared of it. Like you get it, you're there, you're in it. You may use different words and you may see different pieces, but like, just don't be scared of it because the more that you can just say, hey, I know what I know, and I'm here to learn what I don't know. You'll be such a better collaborator and just a stronger colleague, truly, in like every sense of the word colleague. It does not require a professional title. You have a lot of lived experience that is so incredibly valuable and something that systems will never be able to capture or to touch, quite frankly. So just don't be scared of it. It is a lot. It's big, it's scary, it's all the things. But just choose not to be scared of it. And you and your child will be better off for it.
I would say that parents should remember that they are a partner in the assessment process. And it's very important that you recognize your role in the process and you don't divorce yourself from the process. When you do that, it means, therefore, the level of investment that you have in what the report outcomes will indicate will impact what support will look like moving forward. And as a partner invested in the process, as you're investing in a business, you want to ensure that every step of the way you play your part. You ask the question that I've been saying, my tagline, ask the questions, and you ensure that you do what is needed to support your child. That report and what it says, it is meaningful. However, it is not the final say as to what can happen in terms of your child's potential in the long run. So the point is to commit to being a partner in the process, commit to supporting the recommendations, implementing, and doing the best that you can to stand with your child with his or her differences.